Hello, everybody. It is Tuesday, January the 6th, 2026. Just under 100 years ago, the great British economist John Maynard Keynes started work on an essay about human flourishing and economic betterment. It eventually came out in 1930. It was called The Economic Possibilities for Our Grandchildren. And it imagined a permanent problem in which our problem was not scarcity, our problem was abundance. We had too much and we didn't quite know what to do with ourselves. This idea of a permanent problem has been developed by my guest today, who has a new book out. It's called The Permanent Problem. Brink Lindsey lives in Thailand, but works in Washington, D.C. I'm not quite sure what kind of commute that is. And he is joining us now from his home in Thailand, a small town 300 miles northeast of Bangkok. Brink, congratulations on the new book. If we could bring Keynes back to life, of course, if we could, I would substitute him for you, but we can't.
Sure, that would be fine.
What do you think Keynes would think about our world of early 2026? Would it have conformed to the ideas he put together in Economic Possibilities for Our Grandchildren? He was a remarkably productive man, intellectually and otherwise, and this is one of his most iconic essays.
Details would have surprised him, but I think he would have he would have not been surprised by the big picture. He would not have been surprised by the melees that has gripped the United States and other rich economies over the past couple of decades. He wrote this essay in the depths of the Great Depression, but he had the foresight to see that this, what at the time appeared like the end of the world, was just a temporary setback in the longer term story of modern economic growth. And he projected that by the time the audience's grandchildren were adults, roughly 100 years ago from then, or roughly today, that the world would be dramatically richer than it is today, and that what he called the economic problem, the problem of avoiding material deprivation, of finding enough food and clothing and shelter to get by, that problem would have been more or less solved for the advanced countries, and that sort of absolute poverty, serious material deprivation would be a tragic, exception, no longer the dismal norm for most people. But he said our problems wouldn't go away. We would substitute for the economic problem the permanent problem of humanity, which in his words was how to live wisely and agreeably and well, with all the blessings that modern growth had supplied us with. And he said that was not going to be easy. It was going to be having to change the habits of thousands of generations, and that he imagined that the transition was going to look something like a total social nervous breakdown. And if you look today at the problems that are roiling the most advanced societies, a general nervous breakdown sounds like a pretty good description.
Yeah, it's a lovely description, actually. As always, Keynes beat us to it. Brink, as I said in the introduction, you have an interesting life. You work in Washington, D.C., or at least you work for a Washington, D.C.-based think tank, but you live in Thailand. Do you think, given your two unusual perspectives, that the permanent problem which Keynes predicted looks differently from suburban town, a provincial town in Thailand, than it does from Washington, D.C., or is the whole world in the same situation, really, when it comes down to it?
I think the whole world is heading in the same direction, although we're currently in different places along the road. So Thailand is a few decades behind the United States in terms of material standard of living, but many trends that took a long time to play out culturally in the United States and the other sort of pioneers of modern economic growth are happening much faster everywhere else. So, for example, one of the big issues confronting our societies today is collapsing fertility. We're just not having very many babies anymore, and in the majority of people now live in countries with birth rates well below replacement level, well below 2 babies per woman, and so we're anticipating a global contraction in the human population in a few decades, and that population decline has already started in a number of countries.
Yeah, and of course the recent history of your big neighbor up the road, China, and its
exactly
one child per family policy.
Right, which they
more kids reflects.
Which they're encouraging more kids now, but it's not working. The fertility rate there is about 1.1, which means you half the population with every generation. In South Korea, it's 0.7, which means 100 South Koreans born today can expect to have 10 grandchildren. Here in Thailand, it's 1.3, very low, lower than the United States, which is like about 1.6, 1.7. So anyway, this is the things happen. The consequences of economic growth cash out faster in the trailing countries than they did in the lead countries. So I think the plight that the advanced countries are going through right now is a pretty good preview of what the rest of the world is in for. So the good news is that we continue to get richer, that our material standard of living continues to rise, and I think barring catastrophe, we can expect that what now applies for the United States and Europe and Japan and Australia and other rich countries will apply pretty much everywhere. That the absolute poverty will be a tragic exception. We've already seen dramatic drops, and I expect to see further drops. But then the issue is translating that into actual high quality, challenging, fulfilling, satisfying lives for people, and that's where we're tripping up.
That's what you call the permanent problem. So, going back to Keynes, was he really talking about human happiness? I mean, come up with some long words for flourishing, but is that really what it comes down to or boils down to? And what about the cultural elements here? I mean, the classic Western view, maybe somewhat of a colonial view of cultures like Thailand, particularly like Thailand, is people are happy there whether or not they have a lot of money, a lot of consumer goods, a lot of extra income. Whereas in the West, everyone's miserable independently of how much money they have. In your analysis in the permanent problem, is there a cultural element here? Are there some cultures, America comes to mind perhaps, where people are just miserable, they complain all the time, whereas in other cultures like Thailand, even if they're not quite as rich, people are relatively cheerful?
Yeah, so I think there are clearly cultural differences, and affect and sort of public presentation of mood differ from culture to culture. But what we're getting at when we're talking about the quest for flourishing is something more objective than just sort of one subjective state of mind. We're talking about the actual development and realization of human capacities. That's what flourishing is. It's that flourishing means to flower, right? To blossom, to realize the potential within you, and so I think one element of that is a positive attitude, sort of gratitude about the blessings you have, optimism about the future. In general, that kind of optimism is more about rates than it is about levels. That is, if you're in a poor country that's growing fast, people tend to be more optimistic about the future than if you're a rich country that's stagnant. So the rate of change definitely has a role independent of the level of wealth.
Marx, of course, famously in the 19th century, wrote in his German ideology about this flourishing, that technology and the absence of scarcity in what he imagined a post-capitalist place would enable this mass flourishing. We'd be poets in the afternoon and God knows what in the evening. Your thesis, or at least the thesis in The Permanent Problem, is a kind of humanism, isn't it? It depends on, or it's dependent on the idea of flourishing. I mean, there are other philosophers, Nietzsche perhaps comes to mind, who would suggest that humans are rather pathetic. sad creatures, and that they're not capable of flourishing. What philosophy underpins the permanent problem? Are you a Marxist? Are you a humanist? How would you define your position when it comes to the human condition?
Yeah, I would say I'm a humanist liberal. I would say Nietzsche would not say that no people were capable of flourishing, but he would say that only a sort of a tiny, elite minority were, and that the vast run of people were just, kind of social ballast. And that has been, the common view within the elite throughout recorded history. So the idea, the kind of egalitarian idea of mass prosperity is a brand new one, historically speaking. And so a vision in which not just the fortunate and the gifted, but ordinary people as well can have high quality and fulfilling lives. That's something that didn't seem to be within the realm of possibility until modern economic growth advanced to the point that it brought that prospect within view.
A few years after Keynes came out with his great essay on the future and the economic possibilities of our grandchildren, came out in 1930. I think he began working on it in 1928, the depths of the Depression. Another Englishman, another great Englishman, Aldous Huxley, came out with his book, The Brave New World, a dystopia about, shall we say, the absence of human flourishing and the impact of economic abundance on the human condition. What do you make now of Huxley's critique in Brave New World, given that we're almost at the 100th anniversary of that book too, an equally celebrated analysis, even if it's much more miserable and pessimistic than the Keynesian one?
Yeah, I think, the two great dystopian novels of the 20th century were 1984 and Brave New World. And I think Brave New World provides a much better and more alarming fit with our current situation than 1984. And that is that part of our problem is that we can, Orwell saw the threat to human dignity through a regime of fear, but Huxley wisely saw the possibilities of degrading the human spirit through sort of mindless pleasure. And these days, we see, so since achieving mass affluence here in the United States back in the 50s and 60s, the bargain of capitalism has changed. Once upon a time, the bargain has always been capitalism offers comforts, conveniences, and entertainment. And once upon a time, when the world was poor, and that meant that everything was massively uncomfortable and incredibly inconvenient and mind-numbingly boring, then capitalism and capitalism delivered economic growth meant dramatic improvements in well-being, filling in deficits in our lives, eliminating drudgery and physical suffering and physical danger, and therefore putting us in a position where we could then develop our capacities and enjoy that as flourishing individuals and flourishing societies. But now that we've sort of filled those deficits, capitalism continues to offer more comforts, conveniences, and entertainment. Those are, at this point, just really the bells and whistles that adorn a well-lived life, not the actual vehicle itself. The vehicle itself, at this point, we have to supply for ourselves. We have to imbue our own lives with meaning by pursuing projects that are meaningful for us and connecting ourselves with other people in vital relationships that give us a sense of belonging and meaning and purpose. These days, the consumerism is actually leading us, towards the frivolous and at the margins, deprioritizing the things that are most important in life. So we've seen a real alarming disintegration of personal connections throughout rich societies. more and more people live alone. More and more people report that they are lonely. More and more people report they have no close friends. Family estrangement much more common. Marriage happening much later and much less commonly. And as I mentioned before, birth rates plunging. And so we have a surfeit of bells and whistles and doodads and gizmos, but the important things in life we are being distracted from, and so in that way, capitalist plenty is sort of actively interfering with our ability to achieve mass flourishing by leading us off in the wrong direction.
So it's Keynes's nervous breakdown. Of course, he was writing in the late 20s in 1930, in the midst of an industrial society. We're now in the midst of a post-industrial society. The gizmos you talk about are our iPhones, our YouTube channels. Is the crisis now, in terms of this nervous breakdown, Brink, is it less of a nervous breakdown in an industrial world than one in a post-industrial world? Is it the condition of the post-industrial age that is creating the nervous breakdown and compounding Keynes's permanent problem?
Yes, I think it's contributing to it in a fundamental way. When we look at the relationship between capitalism and well-being, we can look at the consumer side, which I was just talking about. We can also look at the producer side, our lives as workers, as employees, or as business owners, entrepreneurs. So I would say, that we have achieved, favorable conditions for flourishing for a pretty large fraction of people, the 20 to 30% of professional and managerial, well-educated elite. I think they are living in conditions more conducive to human flourishing than have ever obtained for such a large group of people ever in human history. But for the rest of the workforce, not so much. For the professional managerial elite, their jobs give them intellectual challenges. They give them lots of autonomy. They give them a career path that they can pursue that structures their life. They give them interesting, well-educated colleagues to interact with. They give them status. They have competitive jobs that earn more money so they can buy more stuff and show off more, so they can feel good about themselves that way. There's a lot of pluses to work life in the professional and managerial top of the spectrum. But for everybody else, jobs have gotten a lot cleaner and safer than they were. So at the purely physical level, they're a lot better than they used to be. But at the sort of spiritual level, I think the status of the ordinary worker has plunged since the industrial era. In the industrial era, the proletarian, the industrial worker, the common man was lionized. The socialist movement made him the protagonist of world history. And the capitalist world knew, with socialist revolutions happening and threatening all around them, that if they didn't treat the common man pretty well in their own countries, that they could face similar upheaval. So there was even if life was dirty and dangerous and degrading, there was a clear, undeniable sense that what ordinary workers were doing was important. They were arrayed at the technological frontier.
Yeah, I mean, even Henry Ford, who wasn't a particularly generous or liberal man, recognized that.
Yes, with the $5 workday, and so the high-tech industries of the day required massive inputs of brute physical labor, and also mindless clerical labor. So ordinary workers without a lot of highly developed skills were right there contributing to technological and social progress in a way that they no longer are. The old class conflict was based on our acute dependence on dirty, dangerous work for progress. We don't depend on that dirty, dangerous work for progress anymore. We've automated a lot of it. And then in the rich countries, the rest of it we've outsourced to poorer countries to do labor-intensive operations. So within rich countries, progress, technological progress, economic progress has become a more elite endeavor that's that needs highly specialized talent. So that means the objective importance of ordinary people's contributions to the common weal has gone down, and with that, their status has gone down. We don't have, Diego Rivera murals or stirring Aaron Copland overtures about Walmart greeters and call center operators. The cultural cachet of working stiffs has never been lower. So once upon a time, we had a working class that labored under very difficult conditions, but there was a sort of a dignity in resisting that oppression and fighting back against it and trying to get more. There's not much dignity in resisting irrelevance and superfluousness, which is what a lot of people feel that their economic role has been reduced to. So I think, yes, the transition from an industrial to a post-industrial economy has meant a massive status downgrade for ordinary people. It's also led to their marginalization in political life. Political life is now run largely by professionals rather than by mass organizations like unions and other mass member organizations that used to have direct input by ordinary people. So yes, I think the not only the cultural responses to mass affluence, but the changing economic structure under conditions of mass affluence have worked to make achievement of or solving of the permanent problem even more difficult than it might have otherwise been.
Yeah, it's a really important point, I think. You talk about lionizing the world, the working class, Copland symphonies, Steinbeck novels. Of course, many historians did it. Perhaps the most distinguished 20th century historian who lionized the working class was the great British Marxist historian Eric Hobsbawm. I recently had his daughter, a good friend of mine, Julia Hobsbawm, on the show. She's an expert on the future of work. She's not a Marxist, but she thinks in similarly sociological terms to her father. And she predicts that it's quite literally raining men. She uses the image of René Magritte's Raining Men for her point about a post-industrial world where the managerial elites, who, as you know, dominated the early part of the 20th century, are now becoming as marginalized, as much of a precariat as the old working class. So we have, particularly with AI now, Brink, and you don't need me to tell you this, a real cultural, political, economic crisis, which is about to engulf the old educated classes. I wonder whether, in your view, Julia Hobsbawm's argument that the current crisis is an all-collar crisis and actually probably undermines what Keynes said, because everyone's going to be out of work with all this new technology. What's your take on the impact of AI, not so much on the old working class, but on the 20th century managerial elite, the lawyers, the university professors, the think tank guys like yourself?
Yeah, I think it's a moving target, right? The capabilities of these models advance, monthly. So who knows when that will plateau? But if technological progress were frozen now, and we just had to work out the implications of the current most advanced large language models, I think we would be in for years or decades of wrenching restructuring because of the the automation of writing. It's an astonishing development that really no one saw right around the bend until ChatGPT debuted in 2022. And yes, I think this has the potential to bring to large swaths of the managerial and professional elite the same kind of downsizing and pain that we've seen in certain sectors of it, say journalism, in the past few years. So So yeah, I think, and that, that there's upsides to that too. We've got a real entrenched class divide now along educational lines, where the well-educated do well, everybody else is locked out. Beyond that, the well-educated have distinctive cultural values that are often very much at odds with mainstream majoritarian sentiment. But the elite has all the economic power, all the political power, and all the cultural power, which makes everybody else who's culturally alienated from that feel furious, enraged, and we see that rage in the populist uprising in the United States and throughout Europe and around the world. So it could be. It could be that AI will reduce those inequalities and reduce the depths of that class divide over a longer time, and actually make things more hopeful in that dimension at least. But yes, I foresee considerable amounts of dislocation and angst.
So I'm not clear, Brink, on your thesis. On the one hand, we got the Keynesian argument that we're all going to get better off, and we have this permanent crisis of meaning, mass flourishing. On the other hand, we have the old Marxist argument articulated by guys like Hobsbawm that the laws of economics created more and more inequality. I thought you were in the Keynesian camp, but you just articulated a Marxist narrative of inequality, of the 1% or the 0.1%, the Elon Musks and the Peter Thiels and the Martin Andreessens of the world controlling everything. So what's the future? Is it Keynes or is it Hobsbawm and Marx?
Yeah, so I'm definitely not Marxist. I think one can recognize class divisions without buying into that entire ideology. But rather than the 1% versus the 99%, I would say it's the 20 or 30% versus the 70 or 80%. It's the well-educated elite versus the rest of society. That's the main cleavage in rich societies today. But I look forward to the possibility of a much brighter and more hopeful future. I don't think we need to, unlike Marx, I don't think we need to junk capitalism. I don't think there is any alternative to capitalism in terms of sort of large scale organizing, large scale division of labor. But I do think that capitalism has grown a lot of barnacles that have made it actually much less efficient in pushing forward the technological frontier than it used to be, and in particular, much less effective at pushing down the cost of living than it used to be. So I think if we can sort of refocus capitalism on its core strengths, which are advancing the technological frontier with an eye towards dramatically reducing the cost of living, we can over time considerably expand the ranks of the independently wealthy, people whose economic problem is more or less solved after working through their 30s or 40s, or working part-time, or working episodically during different parts of their life, and using that rest of that free time that's currently spent on the job, building vital face-to-face communities that once again have practical functions, raising our young together, taking care of our aging parents together, schooling our kids together, and doing other things as well as high-tech advances make local self-sufficiency more and more possible. So I see us moving towards a future where there's still capitalism. It's still maybe roaring even more at a higher gear than it is today, but that it's no longer a mass participation exercise. That is, there's a big chunk of the population that works in it, but another big chunk, maybe the majority that work in it part-time or work in it as a phase of life, like we now treat schooling, rather than as the major commitment of your adulthood. So we're rich enough now where we can take the fulfillment of our basic material needs for granted. That, according to Keynes's criteria, solved the economic problem. But we only enjoy that under conditions of, for most people, incessant precarity. That is, you gotta spend most of your waking lives during most of your adulthood paying the bills to afford that stuff. So I think we can aim for a future where things are a lot cheaper, and where a cultural norm of so-called threshold earning has developed, so that people set a target for themselves, and when they meet that target, they turn from the economic realm to do other more important things.
I have to admit, it sounds rather boring to me. I mean, when you think of Keynes, he was part of that Edwardian class who didn't necessarily need to work, who wrote great books, who had a lot of sex with both men and women, in and out of marriage, traveled a lot. The vision that you're putting forward, Brink, is rather dull. Virtuous people talking to one another. Rather than talking, we got better things to do, don't we? I mean, why not use Keynes's Bloomsbury set as aesthetic, not aesthetic, the opposite of aesthetic, in sort of sexual intellectual indulgency, rather than the small town American virtuosity that you're putting forward?
Well, what I imagine is a much more pluralistic and variegated social fabric than we have today. So I think to each his own. Let a thousand little mini utopias bloom. Again, there is running in the background capitalism, which is employing a considerable fraction of people on a full-time basis, and people who can, meet challenges and accomplish great things in the economic realm. That will still be an option, and of course, in different communities, animated values them will be the Keynesian very second kind of lifestyle, although I think flourishing for people, they need to have a committed relationship with everyone, with friends, and with community members, to ensure that people have, to fly and explore, build pleasure, but we also need the most pressing requirement for a good route that is connect. I want a world that is unbearably quarter people and incredibly, overwhelming and overs to other people. But that people can sort themselves out and find the speed and find the particular mix of values that works for them. So I think human flourishing is on the one hand sort of infinitely various. So our cultural plasticity allows us to come up with a gajillion different ways to occupy ourselves. But all of those basically are variations on a few themes. We need projects that we engage in that are productive, that absorb our energies, and that are of some use and value to other people. We need relationships, as I've mentioned, and we need experiences that fill us with joy. On all three of those fronts, I think we could have a social order that produces much more favorable conditions than the one we've got now. But what exactly will float your boat will be very different from individual to individual, and I hope that that a pluralistic social fabric would give scope to that kind of diversity.
Don't we need, though, Brink, an ideology to do that? I mean, as you noted earlier, and Huxley pointed this out in Brave New World, if you give people everything, they spend their days watching miniature golf and taking soma pills, which people seem to be doing mostly these days, watching television and taking drugs, drinking alcohol. Max Weber, of course, in the turn of the 20th century, came up with his theory of the Protestant ethic and the origins of capitalism suggests that work had meaning because of our fear of some sort of metaphysical certainty or uncertainty. What about that thesis, that the reason why this is such a intractable permanent problem is because there isn't another ideology? We need something else, maybe nationalism or religion or something to give meaning. It can't just be achieved because we have meetings with people.
No, of course, that's right. And so I picture different communities animated by different value systems. Many times that will be some kind of religious faith. I do see the decline in organized religion as part of this social disintegration. There really doesn't seem to be any substitute for worshiping together to build social cohesion and to produce the kind of satisfaction that social cohesion can provide. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see religious revivals of various kinds. I think our horrible politics of today is often a kind of disfigured religious impulse, people looking to politics as a source of ultimate meaning, and it just can't bear that load. But yeah, that we're facing the big question now, which is, do humans deserve to be free, or are they not cut out for it? This is the question that was posed in the Brave New World, and the controller in the Brave New World echoes the Grand Inquisitor from the Brothers Karamazov in the final monologue in Brave New World, saying people aren't cut out for freedom. They just need to be led by the nose by
right. And of course, Dostoevsky and Huxley took very different paths. Dostoevsky took the religious path, and Huxley the psychedelic one.
That's right. That's right. So the question though is, and right now it looks like Huxley's warnings are coming true, that we really are having trouble resisting the temptations of sort of cheap experience over more fulfilling forms of experience, virtual mediated experience over the real thing. But we're relatively new in this media age. We're certainly very new in the social media age that is currently deranging us. When the printing press first came out, its first short-term impact was to launch religious wars that ended up killing a large fraction of Europe. So adjustment to new technologies is frequently a bumpy ride. My hope is I'm a believer in Homo sapiens and in our potential, and in the potential of ordinary people to live lives of dignity in freedom. And so I think it is in our nature to seek meaning and to seek higher purpose, and that Soma and Netflix aren't enough. And so,
what about miniature golf?
And so games of various kinds are fine, right? We at this point, when it's no longer life and death, you can see capitalism as a kind of game. It's a game for competing to see who gets the most dollar points and who wins and who has the nicest stuff. And so there's all kinds of games we play. There's games that are hurtful and that leave some people poorly off. Those aren't any good. There's games that fritter away our energies rather than building up our talents, and those aren't very good. So we need to find the right games to play, the games that bring out the best within us. And also with games, we play them with other people. Or at least we're supposed to. These days, a lot of times we play games solo, hooked up to a computer.
Neil Postman wrote a wonderful book in 1984 called Amusing Ourselves to Death.
Yes.
And he began it by suggesting that we got the dystopias you talked about wrong, that it wasn't Orwell's 1984 that we should fear. That was Brave New World, and that was written 40 years ago, and it's even more true today.
When I remember when Postman's book came out, I kind of rolled my eyes at the sort of killjoyism of it. But boy, he looks pressing today, and you can't turn around for these days without seeing references to him, especially the new wave of AI chatbots and the consequences of social media have made his analysis more relevant than ever. And that is the dangers of the addictive dangers of mediated experience versus the real thing.
So let's end on politics. Brink, you're at the Niskanen Center in DC. It's
Yes.
historically maybe once seen as conservative, now perhaps more centrist, certainly not MAGA, but not liberal either. Who's best positioned politically to deal with this permanent problem in the second quarter of the 21st century? Is it the left? Guys like Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson, their book Abundance had huge impact when it came out last year. I didn't think it was a particularly brilliant book, but it certainly touched on a lot of the themes that you're talking about now. Or conservatives who seem to me, at least, certainly the Trump crowd, seem to be much more focused on scarcity of land and wealth. Is it the left or the right who are
right now the
permanent problem?
Right now the energy on both the left and the right resides in the extremes, and I don't think the answers lie there on either side. So my hope for a brighter political future is sort of strange bedfellows coalitions between people.
To come back, come back
and
Klein.
And I think the abundance idea.
Wait, my show. You have to keep quiet when I talk. Brink. Klein and Thompson are not really on the left. They're centrists, right? When you talk about the extreme left, what are you talking about?
I'm talking degrowth, democratic socialism,
right? So
every billionaire is a policy mistake, etc.
Okay, go on.
Social justice radicalism.
So coming back to your theme of who is best positioned, where's the promise for addressing the permanent problem these days?
So I think the abundance idea has considerable promise. Whether it cashes out or not, we'll see. These are tough times, but the Niskanen Center was actually involved in developing a lot of the underlying policy ideas that Klein and Thompson put within the frame of abundance. So this is stuff that we work on, and I think beyond just the fact that it's tackling important problems, that some of the core goods upon which a good life depends are way too expensive, and they're way too expensive because of artificial constraints on supply. And so we can have real big win-win reforms by removing those barriers and making the staples of modern life much cheaper: housing, transportation, energy, healthcare. And so, but beyond just the substantive policy appeal, I think the idea of a politics that is aiming at problems that affect us all and putting forward solutions that improve things for everybody, rather than a politics that divides us all into demographic categories and sort of stirs up hate from one group against another and engages in one zero-sum symbolic status contest after another about the relative status of my tribe versus your tribe, as opposed to actually solving real problems that affect people. I think in a politics of abundance, that is a practical problem-solving politics of bettering lives across the board. I think that could pull our politics out of the swamp and could pull our society onto the track for tackling the permanent problem.
Where do we find that, then? Who's articulating it?
Well, the abundance ideas are out there. There's also on a more right-coded progress movement, which sort of overlaps about 90% with the abundance movement. I'm hoping to see those seeds sprout and bear fruit.
So we should be positive then in the new year, Brink. You're suggesting that Keynes ultimately was right, that the problem hasn't changed, that we're not all going to be massively impoverished, that we've just got to realize how to flourish as a species.
Well, optimism and pessimism are empirical assessments, but hopefulness, I think, is a moral obligation. As long as you have reason for hope, you should look on the bright side and try to figure out how to make the best of things. And so I think there are plenty of reasons for hope today, that a much better future is achievable. It is within our grasp. We can do it.
Well, there was a Monty Python's song, Looking on the Bright Side, but you're a little bit more serious in your new book, The Permanent Problem, the uncertain transition from mass plenty to mass flourishing, triggered by the thoughts of John Maynard Keynes from 100 years ago. Congratulations, Brink Lindsey, on the new book. And I'd love to catch you again, because these are themes which are all too relevant in the 2020s. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Andrew.